For part 2 here, we've got our program kind of complete to this stage. We're ready now to take the values from the scores and graph them. To do that, we need to graph a list. So we need to put them into a list to begin with, right? I've completed the program here just to do the comparison. So far, it takes stuff in from the microbit, it cleans it here, and then there's a little bit here where it kind of compares whether they did rock or scissors and says who wins. And now we need to start. I have a little bit of a thing to say the score here, but it's not really like, it's only doing the latest score. I want to see what the computer chooses and what the human chooses, and then graph them. So it might be interesting to graph the human guesses and graph the computer guesses, put them into a bar chart side by side and say, you know, is the computer, and it should be random, so it should be almost a straight line across the bar chart. And you can imagine the human would have a bias towards picking one or the other. So let's do that. So I've got computer guess and player guess. So I'm going to firstly, down here, I need to make a list, right? So this is their points. But down here, I need some computer like past scores, if that makes sense. Past score list. I'll just say list, just so you know it's the list. Player past. It's not score. It's a guest list, really, isn't it? Ha, that sounds like guest list. There you go. Right, and we're gonna make these empty lists. These are just empty boxes, so we're going to add stuff in there. So I'm going to get my computer guess list, and I'm going to dot append here. Dot append, apply some glue, and stick this at the end. And what am I going to put on the end? Whatever the computer guesses. Like this. There's the computer guess. I'm going to do the same thing here for the human guess. So there's that human guess. And then at the end, I'm going to append whatever the player guess was. So player guess. Great. Just to check this works, it might be a good idea here just to temporarily to put some diagnostic print statements here. I'm just going to print, you know, this list here just to see if it's actually making a list. So it should be a list that gets bigger and bigger. Rock, paper, yeah, there you go. Scissors, scissors, scissors. Okay, grand. Yeah, that's working pretty well. It's doing all the past scores. Right, now the problem is this is like, it's not really counting up how many rocks there are. So what do I need to do here? I guess I need a for loop to go through that list and say, for each of these items, if it's rock, add it to like a total rock score or something like that. Let's have a go. Okay. So I can get rid of this because I know it is working. I just wanted to check the list was being populated. So for guess, this could be X, it could be chicken, but I'm going to use the word guess because that's what it is. For each guess, I like to make some kind of grammatical sense. For each guess in whatever the list was. Let's do the player first, right? Because I'm kind of more curious. I know the computer will be random, so for each of the player in the guess list, right? If each guess, if the guess, I'm gonna change it to the guess. You know, I should have just stuck with guess. Yeah. If guess, it doesn't matter, right? But I'm just trying to make it readable to another computer or another programmer who might be reading my code. If guess is exactly rock, add 1 to some kind of total. Like we need some kind of like rock counter. Player rock counter is equal to player rock counter plus 1. Okay, now wait a second. I'm gonna just up here put in player rock counter as 0. to, you know, put at the start. I'm also going to need to do this for, look, I know there is probably a more efficient way of doing this. I can think of a way of doing it a little bit better, you know, not having to have 3 different ones here to do one and then just to override it. But, you know, readability counts, and I want this, yeah, be more efficient, right? But like, I want it to be easily understandable. So if someone comes in and adds onto my code, they actually can guess where to write some code, and they're not, it's not all just X's and Y's. All right, so these are going to take a total count of my, how many rocks I do, and it'll also keep a count of the things down here. So go down here. So if the guess is rock, yeah, add 1. So it starts off as 0. Grand. If guess is paper, paper counter is equal to player paper counter plus 1. So add 1 to the paper counter. Ooh, got a random thing there. I'd just like to have it. Okay, and now I'm going to print off the totals here just to see if this is working. Player guess like patterns, I'm going to say. Yeah, player guess pattern. I mean, I think pattern is fine to say here. And then I'm going to put in paper, scissors, rock. So I'll put in the rock is this one here, paper is this one here, and the scissors is going to go in there. Okay, so it should now, you know, count up how many rocks, etc. So let's give it a go. Oops, forgot to indent there. So I'm going to just, because it's a dark room, there's going to be a lot of papers here. Okay, I see there's a slight problem here where it's duplicating a lot. It's going to just get bigger and bigger. Okay, it was repeating itself there because this was inside this for loop. So I've moved it out. So it's going to do this first, and then when it's done, it's going to do that. Otherwise, it's going to, like, if there's 5 guesses in the list, it's going to do this 5 times. Once there's 6 guesses, 6 times. So on the 100th round, it's going to do this 100 times. That's not right. This should be outside this loop. Okay, grand. Yeah, it's working pretty well. Oh, okay. I see it's gone. It's jumping up way more. Like, there's no way I did this 72. Ah, do you know what I've done? I've gone if instead of else if. All right. This should be an elif because I only want to check this once. Otherwise, what's going to happen there is it's going to, if there's 3 items on the list, it's going to kind of do this 3 times. So else if means it doesn't go if. It just looks, goes down to this list, and the first one that is true, it's done. It just exits this whole block. Okay, and that should actually work. But I'm leaving these mistakes in so that you know, because I mean, inevitably you'll probably make the same mistakes. Paper 11, 16. It's kind of still, there's still something happening there where it's jumping up way too much. Typical reasons for that kind of like huge leap up in values can often be that it's like when you hold your hand over the paper, instead of reading one attempt at playing the game, it's actually measuring it like 20 times. So you're playing 20 rounds in an instant. So the way to get around that is just put a little pause, a little break in it. So to make sure that that is not the reason that this is screwing up, I'm just going to put in a sleep here and just say 2. So, and just see if that fixes that bug. So paper 3, 6. Okay, it slowed it down, which is actually, I think it's a more playable game, but it's definitely going, it's gone up 6, it's gone up 7, it's gone up 8. Okay, there's definitely a pattern here where there's something not right. Okay, I see what's happening here. It keeps adding on this every time, but it never actually resets the counter. Really what I want to do is I want to count everything in this list, how many rocks there are. But when I count it next round, I don't want to like leave off counting from where I last counted. I'm not going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I should be going 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I actually need to go back to 0 with my count here. So I'm going to put in this here, which will reset the counters back to 0 when I'm done counting them. And now if I press go, let's have a look. So I'm going to do scissors, 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 3 scissors. There we go. And now it's working just fine. Brilliant. And the nice thing is, you know, I can just copy this whole thing and just change the word player counter to computer counter. Okay, so it seems to be working there now, except I noticed another little bug where the computer is never guessing scissors. So I need to go check my code and see, like, I may have misspelt scissors somewhere, and that's why it's not counting it up. So I need to go check that now. Well, I noticed a bug here. If the player says scissors and the computer says paper, right, the player should win, but it says here computer wins. Right, so that should be player. And player, and it should be the player's point, not the computer's point. And I think that's actually the opposite to the other bug, which is down here. Player guesses scissors, computer guesses rock. I'm not even sure if that was the bug, but that is a bug. And lo and behold, there it is. It's a little P. There you go, like the Princess and the Pea story. It was a little P ruining the whole show. And now it should work. There we go. Rightio, so now that it's working with totals, I'm going to move this into more of a list for a graph, because to make a bar chart of the players' guesses, like 3 for rock and maybe 5 is a bit higher in this bar chart for paper, you know, a print statement is not really what I need here. In fact, I'm going to get rid of it for that. And I'm also going to get rid of the one down here for the computer. What I'm going to put in here instead, just above, I need to do this above before it resets, right? Because here, I'm going to put in these 2 lines here. And what it does here is, it says the total to graph. It's the exact same as we had there in print statements, except this is done as an actual list. The player rock counter, player paper counter, scissors counter. You know, it's these totals. Okay, and then down here I do the same just for the computer, and it is working there, although it wouldn't be super obvious what we're graphing here, so I might put little titles of the graph. It'd be great if these 2 lists could just line up a bit, so I might actually try to do that. After the player, to graph our player, I might just, yeah, this looks much better. I'm just going to actually delete this. We don't need that there anymore, because it's already kind of saying their score, and it'll be a little bit neater now. Check that out. Player goes for scissors. It's a draw. I think that's fine. Yeah, it is going to go to a graph, but it's nice to make it neat and get rid of all that stuff that I just don't really need anymore, because I'm happy that it's working behind the scenes. So to put in the actual bar chart, you're just going to go pygal. Pygal is this little module which allows you to make real nice pie charts and stuff. There you go. Look, there's a very simple pie chart. Now I'm going to go documentation and first steps, just so you know. Okay, because you're going to need to install this. So import pygal is going to go at the very top of my program here now. And then I'm going to just have this little chart. Now, this is not the data I want here, but do you know what? I'm going to just do it first, because step 1 is to actually get pygal to work. So let's do a little to graph for a player, and I'll put the pygal code down here. It'll give me a chart of something totally random starting off. Okay, no module ran, so that's no worries. I just need to go up here and just type pygal on Thonny, find it, install. Now that's installed, press go again. There we go, and it worked lovely. Where's the chart, you may ask? Well, it's rendered it as barchart.svg. Okay, so that will be in the same folder as this. Okay, so when you press go on this and you run it, you actually have to, on the microbit, give it some input before the bar chart is made. I was there looking in the folder for a second going, where's my bar chart? I pressed go on the program. It's like, oh yeah, I didn't actually roll or do a rock or a scissors, so there's nothing to graph. Now if I open up, there we go, there's a bar chart. Not sure if it'll let me open this up. Microsoft, those sneaky guys. There we go. Alright, so my Fibonacci thing is working brilliant. That's nothing to do with rock, paper, scissors, but I now know my graph works. And now I can go back into the program, and instead of doing this random list, right, I actually already have a list up here. It's called player totals graph. There we go. So, and instead of Fibonacci, I can say rock, paper, scissors for the player. Here we go. Push buttons, push buttons, push buttons. And then I open up my thing here. And here's my bar chart. Alright, so they've gone 1 scissors and 2 whatever this was. Now, it might be time to go into pygal now and say, well, surely I can add labels in here, right? So let's go into, that's first steps. How do I add some labels? Barchart.x.labels. That looks promising. Try that. It did not like that. Okay, fine, I'll go back to the documentation and see what it actually, the format it actually wanted me to do it in. Why do they give such complicated examples? Okay, so I'm going to go into the actual section here on labels and see if there's a nicer one. Okay, so this is a better way of doing it. I've just changed it up a little bit. Instead of just doing one chart.add and doing the list of lists, I've actually just gone, just chart the rock counter, and then chart the paper counter, and then chart the scissors as separate kind of additions to my chart. And that breaks up into different colors. It allows me to label each of them. So yeah, that's what to do. So I'll kind of just speed this up. So yeah, I'm happy with the way it worked there. I'm going to delete this whole thing, and I'm just going to, because it's a nice block, put in a comment here just to say this is graph player stuff. Great. So now I just need to grab this whole thing here and go graph computer stuff above here, right? And just change all this to computer. Let me just fast forward that. So I've done that there now, and after pressing it a few times I can check. I've renamed the computer guesses here, and there you go, there's the computer guesses. Computers are a lot more even because I actually just don't like shaking this. I'm probably going to pull the USB thing out. It's computer guesses. Deadly. So that's pretty much, the player guess is still called bar chart, so I better just change that to player guesses. Now, is that enough for ALT2? Yeah, I mean, there's some low-hanging fruit. I mean, what about just saying the most common guesses? Because that's some data analysis. So how would we do that? Well, all you do, we've got this beautiful, you know, total, cumulative total. So why don't we just order that list from biggest to smallest or smallest to biggest, and then just say, hey, the first item on that nice ordered list is the smallest. The last item is the biggest. So then we could say the biggest is this. That's, you know, that makes sense. So yeah, let's just do that, because I mean that also might come in a programming exam, so it's a good thing to know how to do. But to be honest, this is probably fine for ALT2, but let's just make sure we completely nail it. So right underneath here, where it says to graph, I'm just going to put a new line just saying, hey, get this and sort it. So I can just say the most common guess was. So it's going to be not, there's 3 items and the last one's the biggest. So it's not 0, it's not 1, it's going to be 2. It's whatever that is, 2. So this guy, and the second element, sorry, I should say the third element, the last element is that guy there. It's number 2, as we just said. It's showing here that 3. So it definitely, and therefore definitely something was guessed 4 times, but we just don't know what it is. It's kind of keeps going there because of the light in the room, but we actually don't know what that thing is. Now, if this was a database, we'd have like kind of the value, which is currently 6, and something attached to it, like the name rock. But I've kind of stayed away from dictionaries here, so we need to find another way of doing this. I mean, we could just rephrase it. The most common choice was guessed this amount of times. There we go. There's our data analysis done. And that is some analysis. Okay, it's a bit like cheeky because it doesn't say what was guessed 4 times. Yeah, I mean, I would love to say, and that was rock, and that was, you know, but I have to say the most efficient way of doing that would be using a dictionary data type in Python, and that's like, it's kind of like curly brackets where it has a name and a value, like, you know, or people say keys and values. It's like on Firebase, you know, it's a database structure type thing. Okay, and so database type stuff in Python is called dictionaries, but it's really just like, you know. So I'm not going to end up covering dictionaries in the middle of this. I'm trying to stay away from that. I'm trying to keep this, it's already long enough. This stuff is not necessarily hard, but there's a lot. Like, we're already on 190 odd lines of Python, but we have gotten through now. ALT4 and ALT2 is done, so we can go on to simulating now.